Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today I am reviewing the Rolex Oyster Perpetual model number 114200. This watch is from my personal collection. It was purchased used, and I've owned it just under a year. Visually, the watch was in excellent condition when I acquired it, and so most of the wear you will see on the watch from the video is actually going to be from my own use. The 114200 reference number is a bit confusing to follow. Rolex originally used it with the Air King watches in 2007 until 2014. And they started using the reference number with Oyster Perpetual. The dial of this variant of the 114200 was started in 2015, and they ran it until 2020 when the new reference, which is the current reference, was released. So as one can see, this watch has a domed bezel that gives the watch an interesting bubble back sort of look. It has 100 meters of water resistance. It has a diameter of 34 millimeters. It has a lug-to-lug width of 41.8 millimeters, and the lug width for the band is 19 millimeters. The watch itself is only 11.6 millimeters thick. Now, this is the olive green dial variant. Get it closer so you can get a good look at the color and how it works. The olive green is a metallic color, as you can see, and hopefully the light's playing with it enough that you can notice that it's applied in a sunburst fashion. Now, in terms of the indices, you can see all the way around the dial, we have stick indices except at the 12 o'clock position, which has the crown symbol of Rolex. These indices are filled with lume, as are the hour and minute hands. Closer to the edge of the dial, you can see these orange accents. These are additional indices that are applied as a dot style. And I think the only purpose really to give the watch some additional color contrast. The watch has stick hands. The hands, stick indices, and the crown here, we're not getting enough light, sorry about that. The crown here at the 12, those are all actually 18 karat white gold, not steel. At this point, I'm going to insert some footage I took of the watch's lume so you can actually see it in action in a darkened environment. Now, the watch case itself is stainless steel, and it is a cushion style case. The case is polished on the sides and brushed on the top and the bottom area. Rolex uses 904L stainless steel rather than 316L, which is what we typically see in luxury watches. The chief difference in terms of the properties of the steel is 904L is more corrosion resistant. Crown of the watch has the Rolex crown symbol here as well, and it is a screw down crown. And then if we pull it out, the stem into the 2 position, now we can actually set the time. The watch does feature hacking. You can see near the 6 o'clock position, the second hand is not moving anymore while the watch is in the 2 position. This is no complications whatsoever. It is a simple 3-handed watch that only tells the time and does nothing else. And we'll screw this crown back into the watch so that we have the full 100 meters of water resistance restored. Flipping the watch over, you can see that the case back is solid, so you can't actually look at the movement. The movement is the Rolex caliber 3130. It's a 4 Hertz movement featuring 31 joules. It has a power reserve of 48 hours. The movement is COSC certified to be accurate within -2 to +2 seconds per day. It is an automatic movement with a bidirectional rotor. As you can kind of see under my thumb here, the watch on the dial says superlative chronometer. And what this means with Rolex is when they get their COSC certification, they don't just check the movement outside of the watch, which is what one typically would do. Instead, they actually case the movement into the watch and then make sure it's still getting the -2 to +2 seconds per day. And I am in that standard. I used the watch accuracy meter app that I have on my Android phone, and I measured this watch in 5 different positions. And according to those readings, I get an average gain of 1.8 seconds per day with a positional range of 0 seconds per day to +5 seconds per day. As for the bracelet, this watch features an oyster bracelet. Much like the case, the front and back of the bracelet is brushed satin style, but the sides are polished. Screws are used to fix the removable links. In terms of the clasp, it's secured with this lift lock mechanism. So it folds over. There's a position there. It snaps into place. And it doesn't just pull out. You actually have to, there's a little lift. Goes up and it releases easily from there. The watch does have a little bit of micro adjust. It's difficult to see given that I have the bracelet hooked in, but at the clasp, we actually have 3 different positions that this bracelet can affix into. I've currently got it in the middle of the 3 positions. So you can do some adjustments, bigger or smaller, to the bracelet without actually having to add or remove links. And here's a look of the watch on my 6.75-inch wrist. Again, as a reminder, this is the 34mm Oyster Perpetual watch. So, what are my overall thoughts on the Oyster Perpetual 114-200? I'd say the main positives would be it's quite accurate. It's got a nice, clean dial aesthetic, which is also fairly unique in terms of this color scheme that I went with, the olive green with the orange accents on the, I don't know if I want to call them sub-indices, but the indices besides the main indices. And the bracelet's really comfortable. The negatives, however, would be the watch is small in diameter. It could use some more micro adjust options on the bracelet, and the price is a bit of a problem as well. So overall, as I noted about the comfortable bracelet, I really find the watch quite comfortable to wear. It's one of my favorite watches in terms of how it actually feels on the wrist. I note the micro adjust aspect because I know Rolex, even at this time, their other higher end models were featuring much more customizable bracelets than what this had. And I suppose because Oyster Perpetual is essentially seen as a sort of quote unquote entry level Rolex, that they did not give it all the same features that some of their other watches that sell at higher price points had. But it's really only in comparison to that. Of all the watches I have on bracelet, I'd say this is my most comfortable bracelet of any of them. So my complaint is more just in comparison to what I don't have versus what other watches I've experienced at other price points. The size is definitely going to be an issue for a lot of people. I know a lot of men in general would be uncomfortable considering a 34mm watch, even though dress watches historically were 33 to 36mm in size. That's not the standard today. Given that the case's lug-to-lug size is 41.8mm, I think this does actually wear bigger than what most people are going to automatically assume when they hear, oh, 34mm diameter, small watch. But it is a smaller watch, and it's just not going to work for certain wrists. My suggestion would be that if your wrist is 7 inches or larger, I'd definitely try it on first before going online and making a purchase. This watch easily slides under sleeves and cuffs, which I think is great. Because it is the Oyster Perpetual, it is really a sports style watch. It's got shock resistance. We already talked about the 100 meters of water resistance. It's designed to actually be used. So it's not a true dress watch, but given its size, I think that's what a lot of people would consider wearing it for. I also want to note that if you have experience with the current 34mm Oyster Perpetual, like that's a watch you've gone and looked at, that's reference number 124200, and you've tried one on or you found that to be too small, that does not necessarily mean you will find this watch to be too small. The new model that Rolex introduced in 2020, it slimmed the case size down, and the 34mm versions, lug to lug, are only 40mm now. So they're almost 2mm smaller lug to lug than what this older model was running at. So this is bigger than the current lineup slightly. Regardless of the other positives and negatives, the main issue at this stage has got to be the price. I think that the price of the model just kills it as an option for most people at this stage. This reference is no longer made, so the only option is to either buy it used or possibly you could find an unworn one on the gray market. When I bought this watch, and as I noted at the start, I bought it used, the watch was still in production by Rolex, though. So I was actually able to get it for significantly less than the MSRP, which the MSRP for the watch was a little over $5,000 at that time. With it being discontinued, however, and just the general high demand for Rolex since the COVID pandemic, it's just not practical anymore. The model lists on Chrono24 higher than the new Oyster Perpetual line's MSRPs, which are a little bit more than the old ones, and They're currently running mostly in the low to mid $5,000 range. I believe the MSRP on the current 34 millimeter is about $5,300 US. But this unit is running on Chrono24 for a couple $1,000s more than that. So I just think that there's too many other compelling watches with much more interesting features or more complications for sure than just being a simple three-hander that you can get at this price point. There's just a lot more watch available when you're starting to cross, say, the $7,000 threshold versus what this watch would offer you. So while I really do like this watch, I think it's really comfortable. I enjoy wearing it. I would never buy it at the current price point that it's going for. Thanks for watching this review video. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like as it helps the channel out. Subscribe if you'd like to be automatically notified when I release new videos. Thanks for watching and have a great day.